Alright, so I'm going to tie this olive Chironomid. You can really do this in whatever colors you want. I'm just trying to imitate an olive one. I'm using a wide gap hook by Mustad. I'm going to start off with some 70 denier ultra thread. And I'm going to start at a good ways up from the eye. I'm just kind of bring it up to the top. Tying on these wide gap hooks and doing this kind of somewhat realistic pattern, it's kind of a pain. So you can either like adjust your hook back and forth, or up and down to suit you, or I just kind of put it in like this and deal with it being a pain in the ass on both sides. And so I'm gonna come back down to where I started, and I'm just gonna put a whip finish in so I don't slide down into the eye. Just don't want to get down there yet. Next, I'm going to start off with some dental floss. And I'm going to wrap this back a little ways, basically to where I want the length of the head. And then I'll reverse it like so. I'm trying to keep all that bulk on top because that's kind of where I want this particular amount of bulk. Okay. Cut those off for the moment to get them out of my way. I'm gonna wrap back and forth, trying to build up just a slight taper. I don't want a large taper here. They don't have, at least the one I'm imitating from a picture I saw does not have a large taper. All right. I do want touching turns, trying to keep that smooth underbody. Go a ways down. Next, for the little tails they have, just going to use some brown EP fiber. Slide it up underneath. And I want to run that the whole distance back up to the head area. Kind of gets in the way, but okay. And just kind of tie that down a little bit. I'm going to start working it back to the middle. Okay. Come in and trim this out. These are awfully short little tails here. That's good. Next, I'm going to add a brown wire. It's the UTC BR size or brassy size. I don't know. I've heard people say it's not called brassy. I've always referred to it as brassy, but whatever it is. Tie this in all the way to the back. Next, I've got some black holographic tinsel. I'm going to tie it on the far side down, kind of next to the wire, so that they start somewhat in the same spot. And you tie it in on the side or up top, whatever you want to do. Just want to try to make sure it's fully covered with whatever color thread you're using. And you could do the same, all these same techniques using the same materials, just in different colors to, change the look for whatever you've got in your water. I'm just doing this, tying these for a friend, and so I figured I'd shoot a video on it. That's good. Actually, I'll switch my threads. So now I'll come underneath. Snip that off. Put this upside down real quick. And just a drop of super glue to make sure it stays. Switch over to UTC 70 black. Alright, now I'm ready to rib this fly. This is kind of like an under rib, if you will. It doesn't want to stay. If the holographic tinsel gives you a hard time, you can take super glue and glue the one side as you're wrapping around. It'll help keep it in place. I want to get like 6 or 7 turns in there because that's kind of what they have. All right, fold that back. Okay. Next, I'm going to get my UV resin. Just want to be careful to not get it up into your floss and have it all stick together. But I just kind of start with a blob right here on the olive part of the body. And I want to be pretty generous with this. I'm going to move it all around. Try not to get it into your tail. Okay. Now I'm going to do another one, but not as much. I want just a little bit more on there. And you kind of evenly coat this around the body. We want a thick buildup of it. Okay. Now while this is still wet, I'm going to bring my wire rib through, and I try to get it so that it's on the top side of my flash. And then what this does is this helps create these little segments like their bodies actually have. And sometimes it just does not want to stay where you want it. Okay. Just gonna put another turn in there. Okay, once you get that locked down, you can helicopter this thing off. And I'm going to put another whip finish in just to keep my thread from bouncing around. I'll pop this one underneath. Oh, stuck. Oh, and I'm afraid. See if we can fix that. There we go. Okay. Then you just take your bodkin. Try to make sure you don't have any hairs or anything that are going to get stuck in there. And you're just going to kind of swipe it and rub back and forth. Ultimately you're going to end up taking some of this off, and that's okay, because what we're trying to do is create these segments and actually show the segmentation of the bug. Okay. Then when you have it where you like it, you can just zap it. All right. Next what I'm going to do is get my thread kind of back up front here. You just got to be careful to stay off that eye, because it's really easy to encroach on that thing doing this bug. Next I'm going to add my holographic black tinsel back in. Take this up into that rib, clip that out of my way, fold that guy over, and I'll trim this off. Okay. All right, next I'm going to get my dental floss again. I'm going to turn my fly over. And then what I'll do is slide it up under my thread, put about 3 turns in, twist it, and then I'll come back and figure 8 that and put a few wraps in front so that they're coming out the back here even. And I can just kind of build that up. And you see that they're going to come around like this. So a little harder to do this with the camera in my way, but I'm going to fold this over so that it's kind of on the upside, sitting next to the other ones up here up front, so it does that little curve like the buzzers do, kind of a sloped angle. Let's pull that one underneath, and if you get too close down into that eye, put a few wraps in there to try to help prop it up off of there. Now I'll trim these out just to make them more manageable in a minute. Then what I'm going to do just kind of for fun. You don't even have to do this if you don't want. You just use a marker or whatever to color that. You can actually just leave this like that, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually paint this with some UV paint. This is just acrylic UV paint. I find it easier to paint these on using this dental floss, and then it gives the paint something to hold to, and you're not making a mess of it, so it's kind of elevated. You can kind of just dab it on there. I'll come in underneath. And we'll use that paint to kind of connect them. Okay, we just got to give that a second to dry. This stuff dries pretty quick. Spilling paint all over my desk. Okay. Next, what I have here is just a single piece of rubber skirting from, just like a bass bait. And I want this down on the kind of overlapped on the bottom side of where that UV paint is. And I try to tie it off up top there if I can. It can be a little challenging to do that. And then that way my thread, my flash will hide it. We want to get this wrapped around. Oop, close. All right, just like that. Okay. Now we can bring our flash over the top. You don't even have to do the flash over the top, but I don't know, it's another point where we can add some flash. And nope. So this is why I start so high up, because it likes to come down into that eye the time you get down here. Alright, trim that flash out. I'm going to whip finish this guy off right here. Trim out my thread. Try to position that. There we go. That's a little better. Put that one up a little high. And now I'll go back to my UV resin. I'm going to move this guy up so it's not running down into my dental floss. At least not as much. I'm just going to put another blob right on top here. So I'm tying this on a 14. But you can tie them smaller for sure. I wasn't sure that I could effectively show all these things on a smaller hook and a video. It's not quite sitting where I want it, but I don't think it's going to move for me. Okay, I'm just going to let that UV do its thing for a second. And blast it. And that's pretty much it. We're just going to kind of trim these gills up front to size. I'm going to kind of cut them at an angle so they're a little bit more rounded up front. Then I can just take my finger and do that. There you go. Semi-realistic Chironomid. I hope you enjoyed that. Happy tying, everybody. Take care.